Hello, welcome to American Dream Latin Souls. I'm Daniel Ortiz, and today my guest is entrepreneur and venture capitalist, angel investor, John Chavez. John, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Daniel. It's good to be here.
John, I'm excited about having you in our program because we really haven't had anybody from the business community that sees businesses the way you do. Now, you actually are an investor, angel investor, and an entrepreneur, so you've run businesses, but you also invest in businesses, so you get to see businesses from a different angle, and you have partners in this. And just a little bit of your background. You are the president of New Mexico Angels, which is I guess, is it a venture capital firm? Would you describe it as that?
Actually, it's a group of investors that review really early stage startups and then deploy capital, their own capital, into these companies.
Okay, so I'm reminded of a TV program, Sharks, on network TV. So is that something similar to what you do?
Yeah, Shark Tanks.
Shark
It's something similar to what we do, but we do a lot of work on the front end and on the back end. So the goal of our group is to find really good investable opportunities, and that means we have to have good people in the company, good ideas, intellectual property, a large market, and so we review about 225 deals every year.
Okay, so you have a set of criteria before you consider an investment.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll talk about your American dream.
Sure.
So in addition to president of New Mexico Angels, now this is a group of accredited investors, and I used to be a stockbroker, so I know there is a distinction between a general investor and an accredited investor, and we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. And your focus is on early startup stages of a company, and primarily in high tech. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And there's 75 members on this group, and they range from Fortune 500 companies, from Abbott to Yahoo, Medtronic, and Motorola. So you have some pretty big hitters on this group.
So we have a lot of really smart people in our group, and that's the beauty of being involved in a large angel group, because as you see deals come into the group, someone is bound to have domain expertise on what the company's supposed to do. Okay. And so if it's biotech, if it's telecom, if it's medical devices, someone in the group has done it and can advise and allow us to have their expertise at no cost to review the deal and see if it's a good deal for the investors.
Okay, it makes sense to have somebody from the industry that's getting pitched from a certain industry, so you have some diversification as far as your expertise is concerned.
Correct. And so a goal of an angel investor is to have a number of investments that are all over the place. So you think of 20, 25 investments in early stage companies, because there is a high failure rate for these type of opportunities. And so what you're trying to do is build a portfolio that allows you to have one or two really good returns and take care of all the ones that aren't having good returns.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of business owners, they always want to highlight their successes, but not always their failures. And I think we can learn a lot by failure, especially as an entrepreneur. And someone said that you're not a true entrepreneur unless you fail at least 4 times during your career. So we'll get into that. But you have gotten some recognition for your work. You were featured in Inc. magazine, I believe.
Correct. So one of the other things that our group does, the Angels, is we do what's called technology transfer from our technology institutions. That's UNM, NMSU, New Mexico Tech, and LANL. And so we have a group of folks that go out to these technology institutions, try and find really cool technology that we believe can be commercializable. And then we spend a lot of time, effort, and money in taking that technology from the institution, wrapping it around a business. And that business would include a business plan, a financing plan, an intellectual plan, and a people plan. And then we create these companies, and then we invest in them. So we're actually creating these companies on our own because we believe that we can identify really early stage opportunities that we can take to the market and then can continue to grow.
So you're looking for the next Google, the next Ping, the next high-tech company. Before we get into that, John, tell us, what is your American dream, and what does it mean to you?
Oh, my American dream is just to provide for my kids. I mean, my goal is to allow them to grow up in a place and with opportunities. And if I can build companies that allow them to one, pay for their schooling, but also allow for when they get out of those schools to have an opportunity to have a really good job. That's my American dream.
This is the fundamental distinction with the Hispanic American dream with the traditional American dream. The traditional American dream is to, the iconic house with a white picket fence, maybe a good career, maybe success in business. But the Hispanic American dream always includes family. It's first and foremost about the family. There was a large insurance company did a study. They studied Hispanic entrepreneurs, well, actually entrepreneurs across the board, and asked them, why did you get in business? What's your goals? What drives you? And Hispanics over-index like 74% to like 46%. It's about the family. I want to create a job for the family. I want to create opportunities for the family. So you're consistent with that Hispanic American dream.
It's the other cool thing is, my brother's an entrepreneur. My other brothers have been successful in their careers, and my father really made sure that we got up, went to school, studied, and made sure that we did work. I mean, we did work on that he told us to do, even though it wasn't his property. Go clean that lot. So, those little things really made a difference. And my mom was always encouraging us to do really well in school. And all of my siblings have master's degrees, and we're very proud of what they've accomplished in their careers.
The Hispanic work ethic is one of the driving forces that's driving the economy and driving Hispanic businesses. In America, we hear about the Puritan work ethic. Well, I think Hispanics are more Puritan than the Puritans when it comes to work ethic, because the pattern I see in a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with and I interview is that from very young age we're working. And in my parents, I know my grandparents instilled that in myself as well. And it's not, they don't necessarily care what you do. You can be a doctor, PhD, professor, professional, but you can be also, work in the fields. But as long as you're working, if you're not working, then that's no good.
Well, I'm really happy about programs like this because, what we hear about in the Hispanic community is minimum wage, kids failing, illegal aliens, those kind of things. It's so much more. There's so much going on in our entrepreneurial ecosystems with the Hispanic entrepreneur, the Hispanic investor, and it's a story that needs to be told.
This is the untold story. This is why I started this program, is because nationally Hispanics are starting businesses at a rate 4 times faster than the population at large. If you're an Hispanic woman, if you're a Latina, you're 6 times more likely than the average American to start a business, and we're seeing the results of that now, or the fruits of that. So let me ask you a question. Do you believe entrepreneurs are born or are made?
I think they're born. I told you before, I was thinking back about my career.
What's your first venture that you can remember?
I was throwing papers at 8 years old. It was called the Albuquerque News down in Albuquerque.
You got a paper route.
I had a paper route. It's a free paper, and then I'd go around and collect from people for a free paper. Okay. I mean, and then as I went through...
Wait, tell me, how do you collect for a free paper?
You just... suggested payment.
So this isn't part of the business plan or business plan?
No, it was part of the business plan.
So, but it was voluntary?
Yes, it was all voluntary.
Okay, so you learned sales?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, and really entrepreneurship is about salesmanship, isn't it?
Well, if you can't sell, you're not going to be successful as an entrepreneur.
If you look at the iconic businesses in America, Apple, Steve Jobs was his top salesman.
Yep.
We remember Lee Iacocca turned around, failing Chrysler Corporation, he was the top salesman. And a lot of the top business CEOs are the top salesperson.
Yep, and I've done. I did the paper route. I mowed lawns. I sold real estate. I've sold all sorts of things, and I've been pretty successful as a salesperson. Never thought that would be my career path, but it provided a lot of resources for me to do what I do now, actually going out and selling products and services. And I think an entrepreneur has to do that.
Okay, so tell us more about how you do what you do. Sure. How does one get into the venture capital industry? First of all, let's talk about what is the distinction between a venture capital and an angel, a venture capitalist and an angel investor.
Sure.
And we'll talk about why in a minute.
So an angel investor is an investor that is accredited, that deploys capital.
Now, accredited means you have to have a certain net worth.
Certain net worth.
You have to be a sophisticated investor, according to the government.
But that doesn't mean we don't lose money.
You just know that you know what you're doing.
Hopefully you know.
Well, I'm going to talk some of your successes and, of course, your failures, because we can learn a lot from that.
Sure.
But just for the audience
Yeah.
sake, an accredited means that you have to have a certain net worth so that the government, so you're not swindling, grandmas out of their retirement funds, right?
It's a point in your career or your life that now you have capital that you can deploy and potentially lose. And so,
So you're not going to be in the poorhouse as a result of a bad
correct.
investment.
And we always encourage our investors to have a pool of money that they can lose, but it has to be big enough so that it can have an impact on their portfolio. And so an angel investor is a gentleman or a woman who is deploying capital out of their own cash, out of their own money, and they hope that will return a big return to them. But the other thing is that they're allowed to be involved in the company through advice, through counsel, through working with the company on things like marketing, PR. So
they're utilizing or leveraging their expertise and their connections, ideally, especially with the marketing and sales aspect. So bottom line is you help other individuals achieve their dream.
That's exactly what we do.
That's basically what it comes down to, isn't it?
And venture capitalists are different. Now, they have a different model because they go out and they raise money from limited partners, and then they have to deploy that capital into the marketplace. And so they have to show to their limited partners that they've done all their due diligence necessary to make that investment.
And they take a big percentage of the business as a result of it.
Well, it's all about math. I mean, it's just
So our audience knows is you're not just giving money and because you're nice guys. You're doing it because you are taking a percentage of the money of the company that you invest in. In some cases, in venture capitalists, they call them vulture capitalists. In some cases, they take over 50%. 80% of the person's business.
Correct. And it's because there's an expectation of return. You want to get your money back plus a lot more. And a typical deal for the angels is we own anywhere from 15 to 20% of the company. Because our mantra is that if you'd work a lot harder for you than you would for me. So if I'm allowing you the capital to grow your company, but you're still in charge and still moving it forward, you're going to work a lot harder. But if you're successful, we're going to be successful.
Okay. So that sounds like a fair balance.
Yeah.
And you're of course leveraging again your talent pools, your connections to help that individual grow, and so you have an incentive, of course, to make a return. So how many deals have you done over the years?
Oh, in the last 4 years, about 25.
Okay.
Yeah, and
the range in capital investment?
Anywhere
ranges?
from $50,000 up to $500,000.
Okay.
We're really early stage investors.
Okay.
And
that's risky. I mean, that is, of course, that's the biggest potential return. So how do you, and tech is changing so rapidly. I mean, just with even social media, with Facebook is old now.
Yeah.
It's less than 10 years old, I think, and now it's like old news. You have Pinterest, and so in the high tech field, how do you recognize? First of all, I think you would have to recognize a trend. Would you not?
Well, you have to recognize a trend, but where we invest mostly is in the people.
Okay.
I mean, we spend a lot of time with the entrepreneur and their team to see, because if you don't have the people to drive the business forward, any trend doesn't matter. And then if that team can build the business, then you look at the trends, you look at the market, you look at the product, and you look at the intellectual property and say, okay, all these things come together, and then what we would do is do the due diligence and provide a term sheet which says we're going to invest $200,000 in your company, we'll own 10% of it, we'll get a board seat, we will assist here, and here, and these are the things that we want you to do. And so it's a very structured type of investment, and we spend a lot of time in that due diligence with the entrepreneur understanding what their goals and objectives are.
This sounds a lot of like the way Warren Buffett, which is the premier investor probably worldwide, the way he approaches the business. He looks at the people first. And I think that's refreshing in business. And a lot of people, when they think of business people or entrepreneurs or angel investors or venture capitalists, they always think of them as the bad guys, right? I mean, not always, but I mean, that's if you look at a film, if you have a teacher, a sheriff, and a business person, who's the villain?
The business person.
But that's refreshing that you're looking at the people. And I have in our entrepreneur boot camp and the coaching that we do with my business, we have a saying that you can't grow your business more than you can grow yourself. And so starting with the foundation of the individual, and that includes the character. Stephen Covey talks a lot about the character. So that's what you're looking for, is what I'm hearing.
Well, and one of the other things, if you look at, because we've had failures, we've lost companies that we've invested in, and I would say 90% of those losses were because of the people. You know, either they weren't going down the path that they sold to us, or they just got distracted by the technology could do so many things that, oh, let's do this today and tomorrow we'll do this.
It's called the shiny object syndrome. Whatever shiny object comes in, then they're gone.
Exactly. And so we've maybe lost one because the technology was so far ahead that the market was so far behind. But most of our losses are because of people. And we are always looking for good entrepreneurs. I mean, there are some great ones in New Mexico, there's some great ones in the United States, and by allowing them to have that early stage money, it allows them to build on their dreams.
So tell us about some of your success stories, some companies that you've funded and they're doing well now.
Well, one of our best success stories was a company in Santa Fe, acoustic cytometry systems. It was Lanel technology.
Now, for our audience, Lanel is the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is where they built the atomic bomb, basically.
Exactly.
So it's one of the premier national labs. And a lot of technology comes out of there. I had to hold that thought. I had a brief conversation with one of the persons involved with the labs. And this is, I guess, with all the labs across the country, is the federal government wants the technology and the inventions that are invented at these labs for national defense, ostensibly initially, to have a application in the private sector. And their biggest challenge is bridging that gap between conception and funding to take it to the next level.
Oh, it is really hard, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the success was a company called Acoustic Cytometry Systems. It was bought by a company called Invitrogen, which is now Life Technologies. And it was actually out at the Santa Fe Business Incubator where the company was, and they provided a lot of wealth back to the early stage investors.
And what does it do, this product?
So what it does, it's
in layman's terms,
it allows for researchers to look at cells in a very focused manner. So the previous applications of cytometry, you had to send through and you couldn't stop them. But with acoustics, you can move the cells back and forth and just spend some time looking at them.
And what's the practical application for this?
Application is for medical. A lot of medical researchers use these devices to investigate new drugs, how drugs interact on cells and things like that. Another success that's going really well is a company that I started, a company called Zosera. It's technology from UNM. It is a stroke therapy drug that we believe has enormous applications for the market because there is no other stroke therapy drug. We have raised $500,000. We've created a wonderful team around that company, and now they're going out to do the toxology studies, the pharmacological studies, and to raise additional capital to take the test into the animal testing to see if it actually does what we think it does.
What's the potential market for this?
Our goal is to have this drug in every ambulance and every emergency room in the world, so that if you come in and have had a stroke, you get a shot and it provides protection in your brain for the cells that have been damaged. It's really cool, and I'm pretty excited. We found the right CEO. I stepped away, and I'm now on the board.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
So what drives you as an entrepreneur and an investor?
You know what? It's really, I meet some fascinating people. I think
entrepreneurs are some of the most fascinating people. I get bored when I go to a party and people work for it, and that's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But if they're talking about their retirement and how many vacation days they have, it's like, oh my God. And I find an entrepreneur, and we're in the corner, we're talking ideas, because ultimately entrepreneurs are idea people. I get excited about the idea.
Oh yeah. Well, and I couldn't work at a place where I'd have to go in and spend 8 hours there. That would just drive me absolutely nuts.
Yeah, but you get 2 breaks. You get a break in the morning and afternoon.
But the ability for an individual or a group of people to come up with an idea that they think can be successful and try and sell you on it is just fascinating. And sometimes they're just totally off the wall. And the other thing is sometimes they don't do their basic research about, we always hear we have no competition. everybody has competition.
And our market is everybody.
Exactly.
Right.
And it really isn't. So, you know, that thought process, that entrepreneurial boot camp that you do, that we have an angel boot camp that we do for angel investors and entrepreneurs, educating them about what it means to take outside money. Because once you take outside money,
It's an opportunity and a responsibility.
Exactly. And one of the things that one of our serial angel investors talks about is the entrepreneurs don't understand how difficult it is for us to come about with our money. And so they need to appreciate the money that we put into these deals a lot more than they do. And a lot of them really do, but some of them say, well, give me $250,000 and thank you, and I'll call you in 5 years. That's not what we want to do.
Right.
We want to be involved in the company.
Right. One of the things that I know in the work that I've done with entrepreneurs over the years, a lot of it has to do with languaging. A simple question when you meet somebody in a business situation or wherever, what do you do? And the first thing that usually comes out is jargon or something that's so vague. And I can imagine when an investor or an entrepreneur pitches you, they have to have the right languaging, because in order for you, the investors, to get it, and sometimes, especially I think in the field that you're in, the high-tech industry, you were talking about a company earlier. I didn't get it because of the languaging, but the languaging is so important in as an entrepreneur, to describe what it is that you do, so that people, it's called the elevator pitch, where people say, wow.
Yep. Well, it's all about messaging, but if you step back from messaging, it's about education. Education and learning what the investors want to hear, making sure that you're able to articulate that message, and making sure that you believe in what you're saying. Because you can learn from a lot of people, but unless you believe in what you're saying, people are going to see right through that. And so the jargon, the misnomers, the coaching that some of these folks get, it just seems shallow. And so we tell the entrepreneur when we work with them, this is our format. But you have to truly believe in your plan, because if you don't believe in it, the investors ain't going to.
And that comes across.
Oh, it does.
That's going to come across. If someone is out just for the money, or just for reasons, and it comes across. It's intangible. It's an intangible gut instinct. So, briefly, tell me what are the elements of a good pitch?
The good pitch is you have to identify the people involved. That's very important. You have to talk about the technology, but not spend 15 slides on it. Because what will happen is the investors will believe you. You have to say this is what it does. But then in the due diligence process, they'll get in the weeds and make sure that they understand it. You got to articulate what the market is. Because if you can sell one, that's great. But you're not going to build a business on selling one product. You have to be able to sell tons of products across tons of markets. So the market has to be there. Then the product has to be effective in making money and having a margin. A funny story, this guy came to us and said, I can build a gallon of gas out of soybeans for $23 a gallon. If you give me $250,000, I can get it down to $14 a gallon. No one's going to buy $14 a gallon of gas. We'll just lose
that makes
more.
$5 a gallon gas seem cheap.
Yeah, exactly. And so you got to understand your product and how much margin it can be. And then the other piece is you really have to understand how much money it's going to take to get to the next point in your business.
Here's something that I see often in myself. Entrepreneurs, we are optimists by definition. Right? Sometimes we have rose-colored glasses, so our projections aren't always accurate or reflect reality. And I have a saying when I coach my clients is that whatever idea you have, whatever project, it's particularly a new project, whatever projections you have, it's going to cost twice as much and take twice as long. Would you agree?
Oh, probably 3 times as long as 3 times as much.
Okay.
Yes, I do agree. But
that's where an accredited investor comes in, because they know, they've seen this story before. Different business, but the story's the same.
Exactly. And that's where that that mentoring and that assistant comes in, because if they truly do have something, but the investors know that they need more money, then we can go help them with our contacts, reaching out to the Desert Angels in Arizona, the Phoenix Angels, the ATIF.
So your network, your angel network goes across the country then?
Across the country.
Okay.
There's the Angel Capital Association that has 185 members.
What's the pool of money available to startups nationally and through this angel network?
Sure. In 2011, a study by the New Hampshire Center for Venture Research, $22.5 billion in about 50,000 deals.
Is that right?
Yeah, and so an average deal is $350,000.
Okay.
I mean, so there is.
So money's out there.
Yep.
You hear all the time. I think the SBA puts out figures, and they say the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs is raising capital. And I never believe that. I never believe that, because capital is everywhere. There's money everywhere. There's in your IRA fund. It's in your cash value of your life insurance. It's in your relatives. It's your friends. A lot of startups actually do start off with credit cards and funding from friends and families.
Done that. Been there, done that.
All right.
But the thing is, good deals will get funded.
But money's out there.
Money is out there. Good deals will get funded. Marginal deals, maybe deals that shouldn't be funded are not being funded.
Okay.
But if you're the entrepreneur, you're believing my deal's the best deal out there. But they have to understand that there are tremendous amount of opportunities with the internet, with angel groups that allow people to see deals that they haven't seen before and deploy their capital that way.
Okay, so we got about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to talk. Tell me briefly some of your failures and what did you learn from them, and what advice did you give to any budding Hispanic entrepreneur who wants to raise money?
Sure, I fail every day. I mean, I think if you're an entrepreneur, you and an investor, you do that. I mean, you have to understand that failure is something that we have to accept as a society to move forward.
And I'm glad you said that, because as an entrepreneur, and particularly Hispanic entrepreneur, we tend to not maybe be ashamed of our failures, but failure is part of the path. I want our audience to know that if you're going to be in business, be prepared to fail. Not that you will, but don't be ashamed or feel like something's wrong with you because you did. Because people fail all the time as entrepreneurs. Donald Trump's failed 4 or 5 times. How many times has he filed for bankruptcy?
Exactly. Well, and then you got to stand yourself up and start doing it again. So the advice to the entrepreneur and to the Hispanic entrepreneur is get educated. Get educated about what it means to start a business, the business structures. Is this going to be a lifestyle business? Is this going to be a capital consuming business? And then taking that knowledge, then how do I find the capital to build this company so that I can make it a success? Because there is some really outstanding people in New Mexico that across the United States that are building companies. And there is money to fund those, but sometimes taking money isn't the right thing to do. Maybe just building the company with your internal resources and moving it forward is a way to go. So having that knowledge and having that education about what it means to build up a company is very, very important. And there's lots of resources.
Are you talking about formal knowledge or just it? There is a distinction between having a degree and being educated. And
Right.
famously, a lot of entrepreneurs, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, they were not technically educated. Well, they didn't have formal degrees, but they were educated men in
Sure.
this business.
So network. Look at the ecosystem of your community and go to the New Mexico Bio Association, the New Mexico Tech Council. Those type of activities where you can engage with people who can help you be educated. And then look at the resources that the community provides that allows you to get some education about business structure, financing. There's tons of things going on. Yep.
Very good. All right. Well, John, thank you. The time's up and it went by pretty quick.
It did.
I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your story on American Dream Latin Souls. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining us on American Dream Latin Souls. Be sure to visit us online at latinosuccess.com.